Hello students, in this episode of In Conversation series, I'm very happy to present my friend and professional colleague who is joining us from Mumbai, Ms Sangeeta Sundaram, who is the co-founder of Nucleus Insights, a company which she co-founded a few years back, a company which is involved in leadership, mentoring, and organization culture, etc., which we will get her to speak more about in the conversation. Ms Sangeeta Sundaram has worked across 5 continents, worked with numerous numbers of mid-level and senior level and chief executive level officers in the assignments that she has carried on in her 20 plus years of corporate assignment. I am sure that the students of the physics chamber and all the other students who are watching this will learn a lot from this, what I would like to call a multitasking personality, a person who manages work and family and everything that she holds dearly, including her several other hobbies, which I hope I'll be able to get her to talk to. Welcome to the program, Sangeeta.
Hi, Ajay. Thank you so much for inviting me. I have to resist calling you Tony because that's what we used to calling you and call you Ajay, sir.
You can call me Tony once in a while, and that's the kind of calling sign. So, no, it is very good that you brought that up because I have a regular broadcasting service from the physics chamber, which goes out in the name of Tony Science Bites.
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, and therefore the students have actually asked me, what is this Tony Science Bites? And now students, you hear from my friend that these are the people who first started calling me Tony, and I thought I'll just keep the name. There's a nice ring to it. All right. So my first pointer to Sangeeta would be, Sangeeta has worked in several countries, several continents, like I mentioned. So therefore, one of the biggest challenges would be the cultural aspect when you cross time zones, when you move to other countries, etc. So how have you handled that transition part initially in your career?
I think in terms of cultural transition, what one needs is a global mindset. I call it a global mindset. And what is global mindset? Global mindset is one, being open to understanding why people do what they do. If we are open and don't judge, then it helps you understand what is happening. Asking why people behave in a particular way, because what usually comes across is different when you go to other places, that you notice that they're doing things differently. So when you dig deeper and you understand, no, this is why they do things differently. This is why they value something. For example, in the US, if you're working, people will, at a certain point say, I'm not available. They will close their time and go. It's not like India where you'll say, 5 more minutes. Can you just stay on for a few more minutes? That won't happen. They'll say, it's done. Because for them, their personal space and personal time is something that they value very, very highly. So once you understand that's what they value, then you kind of work around how to make it happen. Like in France, for example, they really love logic behind things. Whether what you're presenting is the best option or not doesn't matter. Does it have a really strong logic of why you present? As long as you've analyzed and present the logic, they're happy. Whether it is the right decision or not comes later. So understanding what really works for people, why they do, what they value, helps you kind of transition into different places as you kind of go along.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Now, I would like to quickly refer to your company name. Sangeeta's company that she co-founded, it's known as Nucleus Insights. And that's a word which I keep using pretty frequently in my teaching also, because I always tell my students, nucleus is the engine. And therefore, I'm sure this is a science-sounding term. I'm sure the students would also like to understand the logic behind probably naming your company Nucleus Insights.
Okay. It's actually inspiration comes from a poetry by Lao Tzu. And Lao Tzu is a Chinese philosopher, and he has this very nice poetry where he talks about the ripple effect. And he says how what you have and what you believe is what actually goes outside. It's not that change happens outside. If you change, and things will change outside. And he says this is possible because if you look at everything in the universe, it changes, something changes and the environment around it changes. And he says every person is a nucleus of change. Every person is that nucleus who kind of grows outside. So it's inspired from that. And I think it is universal, that it is the nucleus which holds the essence of the person. And if you can touch that, it can change many things.
A lot of good perspective there, students. And students would love that, because nucleus, I mean, being a physics teacher, science teacher, I talk about that pretty often. Now, Sangeeta has worked with a lot of companies now, and she mentioned logic, and that is something which has structure. And that is something which every science student, every student will need to have. So if you were to give a little bit of a backstory to that, and how students can really work on their logic so that they can be better at problem solving, creativity, and move on into higher roles, which is precisely what your organization is also involved in. So how do you recommend students that they build their logical strength during their formative years?
I think logic comes by being curious. You know, when you're curious to understand why are things the way they are, what makes something work in a particular way. It doesn't matter whether it is in a science experiment or it is with people. You know, why do people behave in a particular way? Why are they doing certain things in a certain way? What is their belief that makes them do certain things? That's how you kind of, in the human side, you look at logic. In the science side, you say, why does this react in this particular way? What happens that it makes this behave in a particular way versus when I add something else or when I do something else? So I think the logic comes from being curious and asking the question, why at multiple levels. So every time you uncover something little, first time you do, second time you do, third time you do uncover, and then you, over a period, you kind of build an entire repository of, you know, why things work the way they do. And I think that approach works at all levels, whether it is at a profession, you know, in a kind of profession that I am with, working with corporates. When you ask people why they do what they do, suddenly they're able to think differently, because they say, oh, this is why I am doing this, because I've been thinking all these days in a particular way. And if I can answer those questions, then I'm able to do things better or differently. I think from students, what I would say is, my son is 14 years old, and he is somebody who also attends the physics chamber right now, because Tony's been generous and said, you know, during the lockdown, any of my friends' children want to do it, can do it. He enjoys being there particularly. And I think one of the things I tell him is, try to understand why. You know, don't just solve a problem, or don't just solve something because somebody told you this is how it needs to be done. Ask why. What happens if you do it differently? Or why is it like this here, whether it is different somewhere else? So the more you ask why, the more you get clarity, the more questions also you get, and that expands your thinking. So that is what I would say based on my experience.
All right. Students, Sangeeta is also a very, very keen follower of fashion, if I may call it fashion. I don't know if I can go there, but I'm sure she would love to talk a couple of lines about her interest or her view of fashion, the way she defines it. Especially, she's an expert in what is the term that you use? She's the expert in the art of
draping saris.
Draping saris. I was caught for shortness of words, and that is something that we in our close friendship circle we also always admire. You don't normally see a lot of women, draping themselves in traditional sari, but then also worn in a very progressive manner. So, what has actually contributed to your fascination with saris?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm much of a fashion person. I think I would use the word style, that I do have a personal style in terms of whatever I wear and how I choose to wear. Sari is very, very fascinating for me. And I kind of discovered the beauty of them only in the last 3 years or so. Because I believe that, one, as a garment, it has existed for over 5,000 years. So there is literally no other culture anywhere in the world which can say that there is one piece of garment which we've had for this long. So that means it has a deep, rich history around it. And the more I have understood every every weave, every little fiber that makes it, I've understood how much of history goes into each of that. For example, something that I'm wearing now, this has a name. It's not just so you see a very, very physics patterns on this. What would you call these? Your wave, you can see your wave theory in this one. Now this is work done with hand, and it's called the Kantha work. And the Kantha work comes from West Bengal, and there's a reason why people started doing this work, why this needlework was being done, why they use certain colors in a particular way. There's an entire reason why they use, the shape and colors together. So there's a logic, like we said, there's a logic behind every one of these things. It's not just a nice piece of garment that somebody made. Somebody put their thought and mind into making something that is meaningful. And I have realized that saris have been a great way for me to engage with my culture, understand the nuances across different regions of India, and actually I have started becoming more interested in learning history because of the garments that I'm wearing, because they're very deeply intertwined. You'll suddenly see a pattern emerge and say, oh, this has a very Islamic tone to it. How did something so Islamic come in this part of the world where it's a very predominantly Jainism? And then you realize that there was a connection behind it. There was somebody who brought that, or there was a trade that was happening with an Persian country, and somebody said, we want this motif, and that became part of it. And you realize there's so much richness in history behind each of these things. And that's what I love wearing. And I think saris have kind of become a little Auntie G will wear, and it's meant for people, old people kind of thing. And I don't think so. I think young people can wear it. So I'm trying to wear them differently and show, what, you can express yourself using saris. So don't think of it as an old-fashioned piece of garment. It's so much what I call it's fashion forward. It has existed for 5,000 years. It will exist beyond many generations. We just have to adapt it.
That's pretty fantastic to hear, because the students at the physics chamber are probably not exactly old enough to start wearing saris, but then I'm sure that you would have, students, you would have got a lot of inspiration from this lady who is actually actually wearing saris to corporate meetings and presentations, etc.
Across the globe, even to the fashion capital of the world, Paris. Have you worn sari in Paris also? I do. I make it a point to wear saris at least in one meeting in Paris. Yeah. And the Parisian women go mad saying, this is so beautiful. We have nothing as feminine and yet powerful like this in our, in our culture. So it's a feminine power.
All right. So in case anybody asks me anything about saris, see, I really could not differentiate between fashion and style or anything. For me, fashion and style is as good as this t-shirt. So anybody who wants to know more, I will refer you to Sangeeta, and I'm sure that she will take up that query. Sangeeta has interacted with thousands of managers, of which several of them are women, and she's conducted more than 300 workshops in her career in the training and molding and mentoring exercises. So when you come out of a particular training program or a module, do you always walk out of that session feeling satisfied that you have sort of downloaded whatever you have planned ahead? How do you take stock of the situation as a transition enabler, mentor, teacher, etc. in your role?
Yeah. So first of all, I think as when you work in the mode of a coach versus a trainer, there's a big difference. What we call ourselves as we facilitate, we don't train. So we don't go with an idea of these are all the things that I should dump on people. It's more about you say, okay, here are 4 or 5 things that should change in the mindset of people, or this is what they should open themselves up to. And then you facilitate a process of, inquiry, of dialogue, of getting people to really share and participate so that they start opening up their minds to think about these things. And many times I walk out enriched, not just satisfied, but enriched, because people contribute to my knowledge more than me contributing, because they share what they have experienced, how they have dealt with it, what they have learned. and also take back something from us, in terms of what they could do differently, how they could how they could think and act differently from now. So it's very enriching. And the way we ask is we always do a reflection at the end of a session. So we ask people what they enjoyed, not what they learned, because learning, we all only think from the mind, but learning also happens from the heart. So what did they enjoy, what they were surprised? And then we also ask what they're going to do differently because what they have learned, what is something that they will go back in their everyday life, which they were doing in a particular way. Now, because of the new learning they have, they're going to change doing. And when you hear them speak about very specific things that they're going to do differently, it has worked. That people have taken that change in with themselves. That's what gives me satisfaction, and it's very enriching.
Great. Students, Sangeeta started her career in an organization which is involved in hardcore market research. Now that's an area where students would love to hear a bit about what exactly is market research, and has that stint or inputs from that area, has it helped you in your mentoring, coaching, training roles that you're currently performing?
So market research is an area where if you want to launch a product, very simple examples, you have a new product and you want to understand, how are people liking this? What about it do they like, so that I can go back and either modify that product or I can talk about it, in a way that people understand. Then you do what is called as a market research. So there are many ways of doing it. One is a survey-based method. So you prepare a set of questionnaire based on what problem you want to understand, what kind of things you want. And then you go there's an entire science behind what kind of sampling you do. You pick a sample set, and then you send people out on the fields to go and interview people and get responses to that survey. Or these days, a lot of it also happens online. But if it's a product category where people are not using, it's a very low value market, then you can't have, everybody's not using. So you go and talk to them. There's another method, which is just interviewing people. There's no questionnaire. You get a group of people in a room and you ask them certain questions. These are called focus group testing. So there are two methods. So there's a survey-based and the focus group. These are the two major ones, quantitative and qualitative. And then based on the responses that you get, you if it's quantitative, you tabulate and see how many percentage is saying what. You do some correlation analysis, you do some regression. There are lots of models, statistical models built. And you test it against those and see, which one is making more sense. And then you take a decision based on it. Or you decide that this is not enough and you want to do more research. So whatever it is. So it's basically a decision-making tool. That's what market research helps, so that you look at data before you make a decision and not just go by what you're feeling is the best. In qualitative, you talk to people and then you say, okay, these seem to be the themes. Now let's go and test it with different, quantitative to see which one we should book. That is what market research is. Now, in terms of how it has helped me, I think one, it gave me the basis to ask questions. So it taught me how to ask questions. And I think that's one of the very, very important skills in life, which I even now value a lot, because knowing how to ask a question which allows the other person to open and talk about themselves, about their situation, is an art. And that comes with having done many things. So market research definitely gave me that. And I know when to ask a closed question, when to ask an open question, because you know whether you want the person to say yes or no, or you want the person to actually open up and talk more. And that helps me even today in my work.
Wonderful to hear that. Students, Sangeeta is also an exponent and a trained resource in a particular method of posture management. Without me actually getting into it, I would request her to speak on that. Posturing, or basically the ability to conduct yourself in the best possible physical sense, basically to take care of your longevity of your work, etc. And she is the only certified trainer in that particular methodology in India right now. And there is also a backstory to that, wherein she was also little plagued by the discomfort of traveling with heavier weights, and then she has found a way out of that through this method. I would request you to talk a bit about this. How is that posture wherein you have to engage yourself in a particular frame physically to endure the duration of your work, and then therefore ensure that you can continue doing it for a long time? Can you please spend a couple of minutes on that?
Sure. So posture is how you carry your body, and what we call primal posture. Primal posture is the posture that all of us were born with, our ancestors had. So if you look at people from our previous ancestors, they sat up very straight. They had nice broad shoulders. But if you look at a lot more young people now, most of us are like this, right? We're sort of hunched because you're working on a laptop, you're on a phone all the time. So we're kind of hunched, and I'm going to show my sideways. So most of us are like this, we're kind of neck forward and bent. While our ancestors were more like this. They were more tall, their shoulders are much more open, their neck is nice and tall. So what were they doing? Basically, they were just using their bodies very well. And we have sort of somewhere lost our ability to use our body to its full extent. So primal posture, the method I teach is called the Gokhale method. It is to help people regain what you had. It is not about holding tight. It's not sit up straight like this. So sit up straight means you'll be arching your back and pushing your chest forward, and you will last maybe 20 seconds and then you'll go back to this again. This is about learning that every bone has a place in the body, and learning to align it all back so that your body is nice and straight and your back is straight, your shoulders nice and rolled back, and neck is tall. You're standing well. There's a way in which when you stand well, your weight is evenly distributed on both the legs. Your hips are taking the load in a way that, because those are if you look at your hip bone, is a much stronger bone than your knee bone. And there's a reason why it is strong, because more gravity worked on it. And I know you guys have learned gravity in gravitational force. And when it's a heavier object, the gravitational force is different on it versus a lighter object, the way it acts. So heavier bones are meant to take more weight. So when you learn all of those anatomical things about your body and learn to carry it well, you can carry your body with very little resistance. So you're not fighting gravity all the time. You're working with gravity. You're using it to your body. So that is what we teach in the Gokhale method, to how do you get the architecture of understand the architecture of your body and use it to your advantage. And posture plays a very important role in the mind-body connection. So lots of studies have shown that kids, especially teenagers who are hunched and who have their head down, there's a high correlation between depression and hunched posture. So mental health issues and hunched posture kind of go hand in hand. And without giving them any medication, anything, when they have just taught them to roll their shoulders and have it much broader, shoulders out and neck tall, their mental health has improved with the statistical significance. So learning about your body, and I know a lot of you spend a lot of time, including my son. I see him, he's hunched over in whatever shape, and now with online classes, you're sitting for very, very long hours. So if you are seated for too long and hunched forward, you will find that you are feeling tired very quickly. That's also because there's a science to it. Your lungs become smaller, your chest becomes smaller, so there's not enough space for the lungs to open up and breathe. And so when you sit up and roll your shoulders and expand it, you'll suddenly see there's more space, and there's more, that when there is more space, more air can go in it, so more oxygen can go in it, and you have better circulation. So learn to open your shoulders, not sit hunched, and sit up straight. You can come to the Gokhale method website and look at, there's a lot of information there for you to see. But key thing is, be aware that your body has a strong connection to your mind. So if you're working on something that is mentally challenging, also make sure that you're sitting nice and tall, so your mind can be at its sharpest and it can work best. Second thing is sports. I know Tony is a great proponent of fitness as well. So being actively engaged in a physical activity also helps you retain good posture. And so actively participate in a physical game, you know, play for an hour or 2 hours, whatever it is, like any game which really helps you kind of increasingly use your body, you know, like bending, like falling, even if it is falling down, jumping, holding something, and, you know, pulling, and all those things help you kind of use the right bones in your body, and they help you keep stronger for a long time. So posture is not about holding something. Posture is letting body go to its natural alignment. That's what, and that's what gives you a very high sense of well-being in life.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the detailed explanation, Sangeeta. Now, the primary audience that you're speaking to are students in school up to 12th standard, and also their parents. I'm sure a lot of parents also keep keenly watching these broadcasts. So, but the primary target is the students who are preparing for these their academic road ahead. Would you, as a professional working mother, plus a person who has seen a lot of training in your line, would you have a few bits of advice to our younger generation of today as they take on the challenges of tomorrow?
My son will be very upset when he hears this, because he keeps telling me, you keep giving me gyan. Now don't give me gyan, give gyan to others also. But as a mother, I think, you know, you feel like your child should be doing all these things. So with the same thing, I'm going to say, I think one is be curious. Be curious to learn not just the subjects that your school is teaching, but anything and everything that's happening around you. Learn what's happening politically in the country, outside. Learn what is happening in the sports, learn what's happening in art and culture, because all of these things are important for you to expand your thinking and for you to learn, you know, there's so many other aspects to life. It is not just school and, you know, math and physics and chemistry and other things. There's so many others. So be curious about learning those things. The second thing I say is, today there's so much content, you know, unlike us when we were growing up, we had very limited content. I mean, I grew up in a small town. We didn't even have a library. You know, I had to go to one place which is a dinky little place with old books, and whatever I could get there, I could read. That's about it. But today, you just have to turn on, and YouTube will keep showing you stuff and showing you stuff, and, you know, you'll never even know how many hours you've spent there. So content is infinite today, but your time is finite. You have limited time. And all the algorithms in the internet world work based on what you're already watching, what you're already listening. So they keep pushing more of the same thing. So if you have got into a habit of watching memes, then it keeps showing you more and more memes, and you don't end up learning new stuff. So your time is finite. Decide how you want to spend that time. So please think of learning 3 or 4 things well, and not just one thing more and more because it's entertaining or it is fun or you just like that. Push yourself to learn other things. So that's the second thing that I always tell my son: expand, expand, expand your horizon. The third is, I think, find something that you enjoy, whatever that might be, even if your parents says it's of no, you know, it's really of no value later, you know, why are you wasting time? It's okay, because those little moments that you spend with yourself are very, very precious, because they help you relax. They help you come in tune with yourself. It might be doodling, it might be painting, it might be not doing anything for some time. It's okay, you know, have something like that, which irritates your parent, but it's okay to do that. I'm saying this because I tell my son, I know it's irritating me, but I'm letting you do it. but have something like that, you know, which just relaxes you. It's not always about marks and getting the best, which you have to work your best, but also have other things that you can do and you can fall back on. Because it's important that when things don't work out, that you have something to fall back on. And I'm talking this from my own life example. My 12th was a disaster. I was a very, very good student, but I don't know what happened in my 12th. I think it was a bit of my overconfidence. It was a bit of my not preparing the way I should, plus something else. Altogether, I didn't end up scoring very well. So I had, everybody expected I would be in the 90s, and I was much, 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 much lower. So I couldn't even get a science based seat. I couldn't do medicine or engineering. I didn't want to do engineering. I was keen on doing medicine. But I ended up saying, you know what, I can't let this define me. I'm going to do the best. So I went and did commerce. I didn't know anything in commerce, but I topped the college that year, when I finished the final year. And I then came on to do an MBA. And that's kind of served me well. That was because I had something to fall back on and say, you know what, that doesn't define me. I can go do something else. I can go figure out something else. So having that something that you can fall back on is also important, so that you don't define yourself only based on the marks that you're getting. So those are three things that I would say: expand your horizon, consume content wisely, knowing what you want to do, and third is have something that you can fall back on.
Thank you. Thank you, Sangeeta. Thanks a lot for that three-pointer at the end. I've really taken up half an hour of your time on a working day. Sangeeta is joining us from Mumbai. I'm sure that she's in the middle of her work also. My dear students, that was Ms Sangeeta Sundaram, co-founder of Nucleus Insights, joining us from Mumbai in this edition of In Conversation series. On behalf of all the students at the Physics Chamber and everybody else, I wish you all the very best in your professional career, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks. All the best to all the students of Physics Chambers. You guys you are in the best hands as far as learning this subject is concerned. And I know one of the things that Ajay is doing very well is in terms of helping you expand your horizon, because I get those WhatsApp messages. I see the kind of things that he asks you to read, to listen, to see. So he's already helping you do that. So make the best use of whatever he's sharing with you. Thank you.